The Serengeti, the endless plains of East Africa. It is here that one of the greatest spectacles on Earth takes place, the great migration of millions of wildebeest. After spending 2 nights in the Ngorongoro crater, we descended down towards the open plains, where the famous entry gate greeted us to the Serengeti National Park. Just minutes past the gate, we could already see huge lines of wildebeest that were making their way across the short grasslands. When people think of Africa, they certainly envision the amazing landscapes of the Serengeti.
Finally made it to Serengeti. Oh my gosh, this place is amazing. Wildebeest everywhere. The plains just never stop. It's incredible. Words can't even describe it. It's so cool. But we gotta get into the park, see what we can see.
After paying our park fees, we headed out on our first afternoon game drive in the park. The giant rocky outcrops, or kopjes, are some of the most famous symbols of the Serengeti, and I would look up at every one just in case there was a lion up there. While we didn't find any lions on rocks, we did find 2 lionesses in a tree. Even though they were being lazy, it was great to see our first cats of the Serengeti. I didn't take too many photos on the first drive, but I did see some hippos playing in a nearby river, which made for a great shot. As the light began to fade, we found another lioness up in a tree. Unfortunately, it was getting dark, and we had to leave her to get to our camp for the night. After spending most of my trip staying in lodges or hotels, it was a nice change of scenery to be staying in a canvas tent right on the plains. Yeah, it was a little fancy, but whatever, I'm on vacation. The next morning, we headed out before dawn on our morning game drive. We headed towards some nearby kopjes to see if there were any big cats hanging around in morning light. As we approached, it seemed like nobody was home, so we pressed on. We hopped from kopje to kopje, but still, no luck. The morning drive was about to be a bust when finally a call came in on the radio. A cheetah, my favorite of all the big cats and the quintessential Serengeti hunter. This female had taken down a baby Thompson's gazelle just minutes before we arrived, and she was eating as fast as she could. Cheetahs have to be constantly vigilant and will often scan around their surroundings in case their kill attracts lions or hyenas. As the smallest of the big cats, they often lose their kills, so they must be extra cautious. But this female was lucky, and besides the photographers, she was able to eat in peace. In the distance, she spotted 2 lionesses on the horizon, which meant that she would have to leave soon. Seeing a cheetah in the Serengeti was one of my main goals for the trip. And thankfully, she posed for some amazing photos. With our morning drive over, we had to wait until the afternoon to see what else the park had in store for us. It was a pretty quiet drive, and outside of a herd of elephants eating in the tall grass, we didn't have many other sightings. Even after spending days in Amboseli though, I was happy to photograph more elephants to see what photos I could make. For some reason, the Serengeti was almost like it was empty. Outside of the cheetah, we hadn't photographed too much. I was still enjoying the scenery, of course, but with no wildlife, I shifted my focus to landscapes instead. The next day, we decided to explore a totally new area to see if maybe our luck would change there. Right as we turned a corner, we came across a pride of lions, who finally let me take more big cat photos. The pride male walked right past me, and I snapped what quick photos I could. Later that afternoon, we went looking for the last of the big cats, where, in the distance, we found a leopard. Happily lying in a tree, but way too far for any sorts of photos. We spent the entire afternoon drive waiting for this leopard to come down, but eventually it became dark and we had to call it a day. Unfortunately, our time was up and the next day we had to leave the park. We made another attempt to find any cats on the Kopjes again, hoping to be luckier than last time. As we searched around, I could already sense that this wasn't going to pan out again. I'll be honest, my morale was sinking, until finally we saw two shapes walking down the road. Two big male lions were walking straight down the road, clearly on their morning patrol just as the light was getting good. At last, a good cat sighting all to ourselves. We would leapfrog past the lions to photograph them head-on. These males were moving with purpose, so we tried to guess where exactly they were heading. Then we figured it out. A nearby rock made for the perfect resting spot for the pair after a long morning patrol. Lucky for me though, they posed for plenty of great photos along the way. Eventually we left the pair and made our way to the Gol Kopjes area as we started our long exit out of the park. This area used to be closed for cheetah research, but recently it has opened up to tourism with a special entry permit. Gol Kopjes was so alive, and we saw loads of animals like this secretary bird, and even more lions on rocks, which let me play with some black and white photography. But the real highlight, we had finally caught up with the wildebeest and zebras that make up the Great Migration. Everywhere you looked, as far as the eye could see, there were wildebeest. Every year, between January and March, the wildebeest come to the southern Serengeti to give birth on the shortgrass plains. A spectacle unlike any other in the animal kingdom. No photo, no video, nothing can properly represent what it's like to see the Great Migration in person. It is hands down one of the greatest natural wonders on Earth. They will spend the next few months eating and migrating on the short grasses in the Serengeti, before instinct kicks in and they make the journey north to Kenya and the crocodile-infested waters of the Mara River. It's so hard to photograph the migration though, so I would try to contrast it whenever a different animal would stand amongst the herds. I could have spent hours there, but eventually we just had to nudge the wildebeest out of the way and make our way outside of the swarm to see what else Gol Kopjes had to offer. Later on, we stumbled across a male cheetah that was lying in the short grass. You wouldn't think anything could hide out here, but this cheetah was somehow blending in perfectly even with a yellow coat. When he stood up, I recognized him as Bahati, a young male cheetah whose front leg was gashed by a warthog and subsequently abandoned by his mother as a cub. Luckily, another female cheetah ended up adopting him and raising him as her own. That's why he is named Bahati, which is a Swahili word which means luck. After we left him, we got radio reports of lions on rocks all around us, so we moved from kopje to kopje looking for them. These were perfect Serengeti scenes, and led to some of my favorite photos of the trip. We stopped to have one last lunch in Gol Kopjes, as a long line of wildebeest were making their way across the plains. Then, out of nowhere, a head popped up out of the grass. It was another cheetah, and the wildebeest were walking right past it, completely unaware. We waited for a hunt to unfold, but the cheetah didn't seem interested, and the herd moved past with no idea that a predator was right next to them. Further down the road, we found even more cheetahs, this time a mother and cub. Mom was laying down and seemed a bit sneezy, but maybe she just had a grass allergy and didn't know it. The pair didn't seem too active, and after an exceptionally long day, we decided that it was time to leave them and make our way out of the Serengeti at last. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and follow me on social media for more. In the series finale, we head to the wildlife photographer's paradise of Tanzania and end up photographing lots and lots of baby animals. Stay tuned.